something in biblical theology. So, we're going to read something we've never looked at before, but let's see what we can do with it. So this is Exodus 12:1. So, help me. Yomer Adonai El Moshe Va'el HaEron Ba'eretz Mitzrayim Lemor. So what does that say?
Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt,
saying, this is, in Hebrew, this is how you do quotation mark. So you can do it saying or HaHodesh Hazeh Laken Rosh Hedashim Rishon Hu Laken Lechadshe Hashana. What does that say? Don't look up any of the words. I want you to try to guess. Chodesh is holy. So this is Chodesh. Is month. Month. Ha-Chodesh Hazeh.
The this?
The this. So do you see how it says the month, the this?
Oh, this month.
This month. La Kem. To you all. Rosh Hadashim. Rosh Hadashim. So that's a construct.
Yeah, so the top of the month.
Right. Right. Head of the months or something. Rishon Hu Lakem.
Rishon means first.
Okay.
And that, or who could be he, but it's probably in this case a relative pronoun.
All right. Lakem.
You all.
So do the whole thing. This month is for you, head of the months, Athnot. You see the major break.
The first to you.
First it is to you. Lech Hadshe Hashanah.
To my the holy years. The holy years.
To the months of
the year.
The year. So what's that saying?
That this is basically this begins. This is the first month. This month right now I have set up as the first month of the year.
And do you know what he's talking about there?
I would imagine it's probably Passover.
Yeah, this is Passover, Exodus 12. And do you know in a Jewish calendar that before these verses, this month was the 7th month of the year? So what he's done is he's flipped his calendar by 6 months. It used to go off the autumnal equinox. Now it's going to go off the vernal equinox or whatever, the spring equinox. Is that weird to you?
It's definitely significant.
Let's keep reading, see where this takes us. Daviru El Kal Edath Israel.
So they said.
And it's probably a PL imperative. You don't have the Yud or the Tet.
Okay. So you all speak.
Y'all say
to all the congregation.
All the congregation of Israel, Lamor. Ba'asor, lahodesh hazeh.
In work or?
In the, okay, so this, if it has a vav, it would be work.
Oh, right.
But this is probably a number. 10. In the 10th lahodesh.
This month.
In the 10th to the month.
Of this month.
To this month. Va Yiku, probably from Lakak, the Lamed's fallen out.
Take.
You will take Lachem to them, Ish Seh. A man will take a 747, a NFL team, very close, a lamb. A lamb, Lebeit Avot, to the house of the fathers, Se Labayit, lamb per house. Are you amazed at how much this you can read without looking the words up? Va'im Yimat Ha-Bayit. So what is Ma'at?
Sin.
That's Hatat. Ma'at is little thing. So this would be the verb of that. So this is a call, imperfect, third masculine singular of be little. And if Habayit Yim'at, if the house is little, Mecheoth, and in Hebrew, if you do a comparative with mem, it makes it a comparative. So if it's good of something, it means better than. So this is if a house is smaller than their infinitive construct from Hayah. What is Hayah? To be. If it's small, Mehaoth Misseh. So you see that seh from the lamb. So if the house is small from there being a lamb, how are you going to fix that in English?
Too small for a lamb?
Too small for a lamb. If the house is too small for a lamb, velakach hu vakisheno ha karov, then who is he? Oh, who is he, right? Then he will take, and his Shekinah ha-karov. So, Karev, have we near? Okay, so his nearest 747, his nearest NFL team, his nearest. Gonna make a great guess. Shakan, what is Mishkan? Shakan.
Place.
His nearest neighbor. So he and his nearest neighbor to his house will take Be Miksath. So what is Be? In. And we don't know what Miksath is, so we're just going to say Miksath. In the Miksath of the Nefashoth Ish. In the blank of the souls of the man. You're going to make a great guess. He will take according to the blank of the souls of a man. Measure, number. And so we're going to check and guess what it means. Number. We guessed a word right without having to know what it was because we knew what the other words were. According to the number of the souls of a man, Lepi, or Lefi, I guess it would be, to the mouth of his akal, to the mouth of his eating. So what is that? How we're going to fix that?
I don't know.
How much each person's going to eat?
To his appetite.
All right. You will kasa, Okay, now we guess this is number. So what do you think kasa means? You will
Number, amount, reckon.
all ha se.
All the land. Upon the land.
So what does that mean?
Meaning you need the size of land that is necessary for the appetites of all the numbers of people between the one house and the other house. If the first house is so small that it couldn't be a land by itself.
Right. That's exactly what the law is. Se tamim zakar. The se has to be tamim.
The land needs to be perfect.
Singular or plural?
It has to be like perfections.
Perfection. So if you can remember the Urim and the Thummim, that's the lights and the perfections. So the land has to be perfections, plural. A zakar, not a nekeva, a male. Ben shana,
Between years. Year.
son of a year. Yitya, it will be a son of a year.
It will be to do you well.
La kem,
To you well.
min ha gevashim, umin ha azim, tikahu.
The number.
From the sheep or from the goats, you all will take it. And I don't know what that means, how it's a seh, unless it's talking about a little. So if it's a lamb, it's talking about a little offspring. It could be for the sheep or the goats. Izim usually is the word strong, so I don't know if we're mistranslating something there or if lamb means something different, but it says here you can take it from the sheep or the goats. You with me?
Yeah.
And this verse is going to make you mad. Or maybe. Ve haya laken la mishmereth. So that's from shamar. It's a noun. It will be for a guarding. Ad arba'ah.
Up until
To arba'ah.
four,
To 4 asar.
40.
410.
40.
You would think 40 is actually 14.
Oh.
So when do you take the lamb in? What? You take the lamb in on day
1.
no
Oh, 10.
10, and you keep it until 14. Okay, now I want you to count this on your hands because you're not going to believe. Okay. So if you kill it on the end of the day of the 14th, that's one day. What day would this be? Remember, you're counting backwards. 13.
11, 10.
So how many days do you keep the lamb? 5 days. So if you don't count it on your fingers, you're going to say 4, but that's because we're really bad at math. Right. If you take it in on the 10th and you kill it on the end of the day, the 14th, that's 5 days you keep it. Yom Lechadosh.
So this month. The day of this month.
To the 4:10 day to the month.
So the 14th day of
To the
this month.
14th day of the month, Hazeh.
This
Month. And you will Beshachetu Oto. Shahat is what the PL of Katal would mean.
you kill it.
Oh, come on.
Slaughter.
You will slaughter it. Slaughter the daylights. Kol Kahal Edath Israel.
All the congregation or assembly.
Right.
And
All
really
the
it's
assembly of the congregation of Israel.
Yeah.
Bain Ha'ar Ba'im.
Between the Arab.
Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker Yom Echad. Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker Yom Sheni.
Between the evening.
Between the evenings. Do you have an English translation?
Are we allowed to use those?
They're this invention that they have that some people use. Probably
Some people use.
you're not tempted, but.
Can you read it?
Mm-hmm.
What verse? 12:6.
6.
You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight.
Huh.
12:6.
12:6.
But this is between the 2 evenings.
Yeah, the Hebrew says between 2 evenings, but that English translation, that sounds like that woman that you gave me. I didn't mean it to sound that way. But English translation, because I love the ESV. We're just having a lover's quarrel right now. Is assuming that Bain Ha'arba'im means twilight. But you have a very good question, I think.
All of this and that.
How is Bain Ha'arba'im used elsewhere in Hebrew language? We can look it up, or we could do the work ourselves. Which one would be more productive, do you think?
I mean, I don't care.
Humor me.
What do you mean, do the work ourselves? Isn't
How
that
did
so-
Jews understand Bain Ha'arba'im?
Well, we could look in some of the Targums.
We could look in some of the Targums. We could look at the Babylonian Talmud. We could look at Philo and Josephus and Jubilees and countless other, or we could read English commentaries. Do you have a preference there? That sounds harsh, but
It didn't sound harsh until you said that sounds harsh.
and then you realize it did sound pretty harsh. And I'm trying. I can be such a sarcastic person, and I'm sorry. God's helping me. Bain Ha'arba'im. I love this about Logos. You're able to do your own study notes. And actually, you're able to share those study notes if you have a congregation of people, and you can put it all in a document in Faith Life, and everybody can access, everybody can add. So where else does this phrase occur? So I just looked up Bain Ha'arba'im, and it occurs in all these places. So let's read these in English, and we'll read them in English, but who'll read the different ones? 12:6 we read, 16:12.
So I have heard the grumbling of the people of Israel. Say to them, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. Then you shall know that I am Yahweh your God.
Okay, what about Exodus 29:39?
One lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight.
At twilight in 29:41.
The other lamb you shall offer at twilight.
38,
When Aaron sets up the lamps at twilight.
twilight. Leviticus 23:5.
On the 14th day of the month of twilight.
And the same thing, 9:3, 5, and 11.
Yeah, it's the same. 14th day of this month of
and Numbers 24, 4 through 8.
28, 4.
28, 4 and 28, 8.
Yeah, so the other lamb you shall offer at twilight, the other lamb you shall offer at twilight.
So all we did was highlight this and search for it in the Bible, and that's what it brought back. So there, all the translations are translating at twilight. So who am I? But I'm going to say that's wrong. So what might we do if we want to know how other Jews understood it? Where could we go? First place we can go is the Septuagint. And the Septuagint translates it pros hesperon. And can you hear the word vespers in there? So what would, if any of you have taken Greek, what would pros hesperon?
Two are facing.
Towards evening. Is that different from twilight in your mind? Do you know twilight is after the sun goes down, but before the light? It's when the light's bouncing off, when there is no sun, but the light's bouncing off the atmosphere. And there are three shades of twilight. There's civil twilight, astronomical, navigable twilight, and astronomical twilight, and they're all 6 degrees. So by the time you get to 18 degrees below the sun, that's not twilight anymore. Same for when the sun comes up. It's the reverse of that. Is twilight what the Septuagint is reading? Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to vote no. But who can tell me what the Mishnah is? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Mishnah, in 90 AD, when the temple was destroyed, Jews were afraid that their culture would be lost. And so from 90 AD to about 200 AD, those ceremonies were codified in a Jewish document called the Mishnah, which means the addition. And the Mishnah is divided into stuff like oaths, tithes, Sabbaths. And the Mishnah is very helpful because it tells you how Jews did things. And the Mishnah has a tractate called Pesachim, which means Passovers. So what do you think the tractate Pesachim is about? How you do Passovers if you're a Jew. This is what the Mishnah says. The continual daily offering was slaughtered half an hour after the 8th hour and sacrificed an hour after the 9th hour. But on the day of the Passover, whether that day happened to be a weekday or Sabbath, it was slaughtered at half after the 7th hour and sacrificed half after the 8th hour. When the day before the Sabbath happened to be a Friday, it was slaughtered half an hour after the 6th hour, sacrificed half an hour after the 7th hour, and the Passover sacrifice celebrated afterwards. Now they're counting sun up to sundown. So there are 12 hours in the day. So when does the Mishnah say the Passover lambs were sacrificed?
From like sun up 6 or something? 5.
Hour 0 is 6 in the morning. Hour 1 is 7. Hour 2 is 8. Hour 3 is 9. Hour 6 is 12. Hour 9 is 2. 2. Twilight? Mid-afternoon? Oh, what do they know? They're just Jews, right? They're just Jews who are writing down the official of how to do the Passover. I mean, why should we in our English consult them? Sorry, I'm so sarcastic, but this just makes me mad, okay? I'm I'm not a pretty person when I get mad about stuff like this. So tell me what the Talmud is. The Mishnah is written in Hebrew. Well, I'm glad you asked what the Talmud is. Okay. So think of this as the Mishnah, and we're on the tractate Pesachim on Passover. And if you look at one of these in the library, it's going to be written like this. And then, have you ever seen a Jewish book and it's got writing like this?
Is it like a commentary?
It's the commentary on the Mishnah. And so that's what it's going to look like. And this was written about 500 AD. So this is 90 to 200, and this is like 200 to 500. So the Talmud is kind of like the study Bible notes on the Mishnah. And the way it works is the Mishnah will say, well, you do it this way. And the Talmud will be, well, Rabbi so-and-so says the Mishnah is wrong. Or Rabbi so-and-so says the Mishnah is wrong. Second rabbi will say, Rabbi A is an idiot because he doesn't understand this verse. And then Rabbi C will say, Rabbi B is an idiot because he doesn't understand this verse. And so the Talmud is simply rabbis arguing about the Mishnah. So are you with me? So the dark, and what's great about this is Logos has an English translation of both the Mishnah and the Talmud, very accessible translation that gives you Jewish interpretation for 500 years. The dark is the Mishnah. So, like in our thing, it's the middle paragraph that's written in Hebrew. The outer paragraphs are written in Aramaic. So, they say exactly what we said, and none of the rabbis debate whether that's right or not. What does that tell you?
It's probably right.
It's probably right. And you see they're putting this 132. Are they doing it when the sun goes down? Well, what about Josephus? When does Josephus say you offer the Passover lamb? And if you're counting from sunup, what's the 9th hour? 3. And what's the 11th hour? 5. What about when Josephus talks about it again? Morning and evening sacrifice. When are they offered?
Morning and about the 9th hour.
Which is what time?
3 o'clock.
Is that twilight?
No.
Well, we've got the Mishnah, we've got the Talmud, we've got Josephus, whose father was a priest, but hey, what does he know? Right? Well, what about Josephus again? That one's not as clear. What about the cult people at Qumran? When did they think Bein Ha'arba'im was?
Between the evenings from the third part of the day until the third part of the night.
And keep reading.
Because 2 parts of the day are given for light and 1/3 for evening.
So if you're dividing up 12 hours, what is evening?
If you're dividing up 12 hours, you put it in 3 parts, and so it would be 4, 4, and 4. So it would be 8 hours and 4 hours.
Right, so when is Be exactly what the Mishnah said, right? 2 to 6.
pretty much.
But not after the sun goes down. What about Targum Onkelos, between the two suns?
This is new.
Lightfoot says 12 o'clock. We'll just skip down. He says exactly what the Mishnah says. Gesenius, our Hebrew friend, he quotes Arabic and he says, no, it's after the sun goes down. But he says the Pharisees said it was in the daytime, and he says, see Josephus, but Josephus didn't say the Pharisees. Josephus said they all did it then. We just go through all these things. They're all citing exactly what we saw, but in terms of Jewish documents, when did the Jewish documents say Bein HaArbaim was?
Well, 2 or 3.
Okay, help me in terms of the meta-narrative. What moment do you slaughter the Passover lambs?
9th hour or something like that.
Okay, help me. When did Jesus die on the cross?
It's about the 9th hour.
And what day did he die on the cross?
On Friday.
Jewish day.
Was it the 14th day of the month?
It was the 14th day of Nisan. What day was Jesus taken in? Oh, I blew it. Don't look at this. Look at John 12:1. Oh man. Because what day is the 10th? Did we say 1, 2, 3, 4?
5 days.
Oh man, we missed it by 1 day. Oh. But since we're in John 12, we might as well keep reading. So John 12:1 says something happened on 6 days before. And I'm just going to keep reading. This is Martha, Lazarus, Bethany. Man.
The next day of the Lord.
On the next day. Now, what day would that be?
The 5th day.
And what do they do on the 5th day?
They do Hosanna. It's the Palm Sunday or whatever.
They take Jesus into Jerusalem and they keep him safe. For 1 day, for 2 days, for 3 days, for 4 days, for 5 days, and then they kill him. Do you know there's another Jewish ceremony connected with Passover? Did you know that? It's called First Fruits. It's in that wonderfully devotional book called Leviticus. I think it's Leviticus 23. And we're told about this really weird offering called First Fruits in Leviticus 23. And can you find when First Fruits is offered in Leviticus 23? So it outlines how you do Passover, and then after Passover, it's going to say, do this little offering. When do you offer that offering of first fruits?
You come
when you come into the land, but then it tells you what day you're supposed to offer it.
Day after the Sabbath.
Okay, day after the Sabbath. Remind me what day of the week that would be?
First day.
Huh. So you're telling me that on Sunday, after Passover, the Jews were offering an offering called first fruits, the first thing that springs up out of the ground? God says, put that in a basket, wave it before me. When you wave that offering, everything's going to be all right between us.
I don't even know how you'd be able to make something like that up.
With a lunar calendar. This isn't a solar calendar. This is a lunar calendar. 1,500 years before it happened. And isn't Jesus in the New Testament called the first fruits of them that slept? Now let me ask you a question, and be honest. How much of that could you get from an English Bible?
I mean, I don't know that you'd be able to get all that from a Hebrew Bible unless you were paying attention.
The English doesn't really give you a chance.
Yeah, English doesn't give you a chance.
Because they do what with Bein HaArbaim? Twilight. And the moment they do it twilight, you look up what twilight means, and twilight's after the sun goes down. And if the Passover lamb was offered after the sun went down, there's no connection with Jesus dying at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Even if you got the first fruits thing, but didn't get the, it still wouldn't do much for you. You'd have to have both to make it really pop.
But one Arbaim is a mid-afternoon sacrifice. And how do we know it's a mid-afternoon sacrifice? Because the Jews tell us it. The Jews tell us, you offer this at 2:30, between 2:30 and 5, and the Mishnah tells us that, the Talmud tells us that, the Jubilees tells us that, and Josephus tells us that. But somehow, that isn't good enough for English translators because they'd rather go with Gesenius. Gesenius did not know what he was talking about. Gesenius bought into higher criticism, and he raised himself above the Bible, so he didn't believe there was a meta-narrative, and he was never looking for it, and that's why he never saw it. A child can see it. A child can see it if you help them with Bein HaArbaim is mid-afternoon. Now, how do we know from Genesis 1 that days are counted by Jews as light, darkness, and then greater light? How do we know that that's how Jews count days? Because there was evening, there was morning, day one. There was light, it goes into darkness, and then it goes into greater light. It's a meta-narrative picture of the creation. Light that goes into darkness, then it gives way to greater light. Days for Jews are counted evening to evening. And if you have Jewish friends and you say, when does the day start? They'll all tell you the same thing. Turn your back to the sun, look straight out. When you can see your shadow in your peripheral vision, that's when the day starts. Well, when is that? Okay, for me, it's right there. Here's the horizon. Do you know your hand is an hour? Doesn't that put it about 3 o'clock? You go to Jerusalem on Friday, 5 o'clock, they're celebrating the Sabbath at the Wailing Wall. All Jews count it that way. But Gesenius said, no, it's after sundown. Gesenius is citing one medieval interpreter. I think the interpreter is Ibn Ezra. And Ibn Ezra says basically everybody got it wrong until me. It's twilight. And everybody just bought into it. And it's wrong. And because that mistake is perpetuated in our English translation, it robs the English reader of making the biblical theological connection that when you make it, it's like, oh my goodness, how in the world do you get not only the 10th day right and the 14th day right, but you get which day of the week it falls on right, all surrounded the person of Jesus 1,500 years before it happened, using nothing but a lunar calendar. That looks like it was somebody who knew what was coming and was building in those details for a Christocentric point. And if you've ever wondered, and do you realize that today is the 14th day of Nisan in the Jewish calendar? I mean, if we were in Passover week, and do you realize that the reason Easter floats in our calendar is because we're mimicking the Jewish calendar for Passover? Passover being the first full moon after the spring equinox, and Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the first new moon, after the spring equinox. Biblical theology makes all that make sense. But do you realize the only way your people will ever hear any of that is if you keep it the Hebrew and you help them see it? And who knows, maybe God's going to raise up people in your congregation who are going to be the next editor for the revised ESV or whatever it is, and they're going to fix these over time so that English readers can make the connection that even a child can make if the raw material were put in their hands. That's why we as ministers have to keep reading, because if you don't read Hebrew, you're going to come up to somebody like Gesenius, and you're going to see the squiggly Arabic, and you're going to say, he must know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's talking about because he's a higher critic, and he doesn't let the text take him. He's just quoting books he read. You read Hebrew, you can stand on your own 2 feet, and you can say, this is why Bein HaArbaim is in mid-afternoon. You can say all that other stuff. Here's the evidence. Mishnah, Talmud, Josephus, Jubilees, and we could add to that a whole host of prominent Jewish commentators. But because Gesenius is a prominent higher critic, everybody cites him, and he's wrong. We don't have to be wrong. We can help our people not be wrong, but we got to keep reading Hebrew. And do you realize that we read all of this without having to use lexica or stuff? It was just stuff, and we just took it where it went, and we asked the question, well, what is Bein HaArbaim? Where else is it used? We tracked it down, and then we saw that it supports biblical theology. And then, so my passionate case for reading Hebrew, empower your people, because it's easier to see biblical theology if you can read the Hebrew. And don't ever forget that you may be as close to the Hebrew Bible as some people ever get. And is it worth studying? I would say yes, it's worth studying. So let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back and read some in Genesis.